is talking about how the youth need to know, like, to pay attention to what they're doing and need to be more alert in what we do and what we say and what we believe in. And it's like it's all we
Okay, we should be ready for United Park. Okay.
Happy Sabbath again. Happy Sabbath. Who was not able to hear what the song is saying, especially those of us who were born here, who did not know the song. Okay, the song was simply saying that tell God your problems and He will be able to help you. May God bless you.
Thank you, sir. Now for the moment that we've been waiting for, how many of us know that the Seventh-day Adventist Church has 5 levels to it? Right? You have the local church, the conference, what else? The union, the division, and general conference. Right? Today we're going to talk about the regional conference, which is connected to the conference. Right? It's on the same level as a conference, but we are a part of a regional conference. So Elder Dana Edmond is the executive director of the Regional Conference Ministries. And so without further ado, I'm going to invite him to come and share with us as he can.
Thank you, Elder Palmer, and good afternoon, everybody. Oh, that was a few, somebody. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you for staying by. We want to talk this afternoon for a little bit about regional conferences, how they came into being, and we're going to talk about the history and what we call the continuing viability, which means we want to talk about why we have them and why we still need them. Because I'm imagining most of you know that there's a Lake Region Conference, there's a Central States Conference, there's a Minnesota Conference, and all of them have churches right here in Minneapolis. And so you're probably wondering, how is it that we have all of these conferences serving the same God in one city, right? And so we want to talk about how regional conferences, Lake Region and Central States are a regional conference. Now, I have to admit, usually there's only one regional conference in a city. This is probably the only city where there's 2 regional conferences. Now, I probably am not going to be able to explain why that is, but we will talk about why there's regional conferences and the Minnesota conference in the same city. Why do you need both? All right? So we're going to do that today. But before we do that, let's bow our heads and let's ask God's blessing. Lord, thank you for the opportunity to again share with your people. As we do that, we ask that we will do so with your guidance, your spirit. We ask this in the name of your Son. Amen. All right. So first we want to talk about the 9 regional conferences. In the United States, there are 9 regional conferences. All right, and so there you have, the first one is Allegheny East Conference. Allegheny East Conference covers the middle part of the northeastern part of the United States. That's New Jersey, most of Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland, that area. The next conference is Allegheny West. Once upon a time, Allegheny was one conference, but it got so big, they divided it in half. Allegheny East, Allegheny West. Allegheny West covers part of the Midwest, mostly Ohio, Western Pennsylvania, and Western Virginia. All right? Central States, which is, we've heard of Central States, right? We've heard of Central States, right? Well, we've heard of Central States because that's what the conference you're in. Central States is the smallest of the 9 regional conferences, but it covers the most territory. Missouri, Colorado, a portion of Minnesota, go to the next slide. All right, then you have Lake Region, which covers the rest of the Midwest, Chicago, Illinois, Indiana, Wisconsin, Minnesota. That's the very first regional conference, founded in 1944. Northeastern is the largest conference, largest regional conference. It's headquartered in New York. Most of the regional conference, most of Northeastern is in New York City, right? But it also covers Connecticut, and a couple of other states in the Northeast. Then we get to the Southern Conference, South Atlantic. That's Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina. Let's go to the next. And then you have South Central, which is where I'm from. That covers Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, Mississippi, and a little bit of Florida. And then you have Southeastern, which is mainly Florida. And then the last one is Southwest region, which covers the Southwest, Texas primarily, Oklahoma, New Mexico, Arkansas, and Louisiana. Okay, so those are the 9 regional conferences. Next slide. All right, and then those are the people who make up the regional president's council. We won't go into that. All right, let's go to the next slide. Now, I work for the Office for Regional Conference Ministries. Besides my wife and Elder Palmer, exactly 0 people in this room probably know what the Office for Regional Conference Ministries is. So today we're going to tell you real quickly what that is. All right, let's go to the next slide. Basically, the Regional Conference, the Office for Regional Conference Ministries coordinates all the activities that regional conferences do together, except for retirement. So let's give you some examples. How many of you have heard of Breath of Life? Heard of Breath of Life? All right. Breath of Life is the television ministries led by a very powerful preacher named W. Smith, great preacher. They are on the bottom floor of our office, and they do evangelism and television ministries all around the world. That takes money. And my office gives them about $300,000 every year in which to operate, and they operate out of our office. Message Magazine is the oldest missionary journal, black journal, in the United States, all right? And so we give them about $100,000. PELC is the ministerial and evangelistic training meeting that we do in Huntsville, and BETA is the organization for our young people, Black Adventist Youth Directors organization, that we subsidize them. We publish the Regional Voice. That's the news magazine that tells what's going on in regional conferences and get that around. All right, next slide. All right. My office organized our outreach to Africa. Most people do not know that almost half of all Seventh-day Adventists live on the continent of Africa. The African continent makes up by far the largest block of Adventists. When you combine the people in Africa, how many of you are from Africa? Right? All right, that's right, okay. When you combine the people from Africa who live in Africa, and then you combine the people like me whose ancestors lived in Africa, in North America and in the Caribbean, by far the largest block of people in the Seventh-day Adventists are people whose roots are in Africa. So we decided in North America, it was time to connect with our brothers on the other side of the Atlantic to talk about how we can work together to do ministry. And so, Mrs. Edmond and I went to Kenya. Anybody from Kenya? Oh, a bunch of you all from Kenya. All right, all right. Mrs. Edmond and I went to Kenya, and we met with the president of the East Central African Division, Dr. Aguri, and we said, would you be interested in a summit meeting between the African leadership and the African American leadership? And so they said, of course we'd be interested. And so Mrs. Edmond and I set up, because you couldn't just bring people over to Kenya without somebody arranging the housing and the food. And one of the places we took the group on a safari in Kenya, right? And there's most of you, if you live in Nairobi, if you're from Nairobi, you know there's a park there. And so Ms. Evan and I went first, and then you know when you go on a safari, what you want to do is you want to see the lions. I have no idea why people want to see the thing that can kill them. But we chased, we rode, we bumped along for 2 hours looking for lions. And finally we found them, and so after I saw them, I said, okay, I've seen them, I'm ready to leave. Because we were riding in this open vehicle. And so I said, okay, they can jump in where we are. So it's time to go. But we had a wonderful time. Then the next year we brought the group back, and the African American leadership had a summit meeting with the African leadership. And we had a wonderful time talking about how we can do ministry together. And I've had the privilege of going back 3 more times since then, and I'm supposed to go back again in the fall to do, one of our pastors did an evangelistic meeting over there, baptized over 300 members, and so we are presently seeing how we can do ministry together. That picture is the group picture that we took on the campus of Adventist University of Africa. Anybody ever been there? Yeah, you've been to Adventist University. Beautiful campus, beautiful campus. And we had, as a matter of fact, I told the person who took us around, I said, now, we came here to see how we could raise money and help you. I said, but after I came to this beautiful campus, instead of me sending money to you, you need to send money to me, because this is beautiful, beautiful campus. And so that's one of the things our office does. All right, let's go to the next slide. All right, but in addition to connecting with people who look like us in Africa, we also met last month with the Inter-American Division. That's our brothers from the Caribbean. And so we talked about doing ministry with them. They have invited me to come and preach for them for their leadership convention in July. They've invited some other people to do workshops, and we met with them in March. My office coordinated that as well, that meeting. All right, let's go to the next slide. My office organizes the leadership meeting of all the regional conferences. We meet 4 times a year. That's one of the meetings that we have in Florida. All right, next slide. We just finished building a 32,000 square foot, $9 million building that houses all of our ministries in Huntsville. And here's the good news. When we walked in the door last October, October, even though the building cost $9 million, we own nothing when we moved in. Let's say that again. All right. And I'm going to tell you how that happened in a little while. All right? ORCM is responsible for coordinating the annual ORCM, Oakwood University Ministry Connection. What that means is every year we bring all the presidents to Huntsville to meet with the theology students to interview them for jobs. So our office coordinates that, and there are a couple of young people that your conference hired. I had the privilege of being at the introduction when one of the pastors, New York pastors, was installed that got hired as a result of the meeting that our office organized. All right? We were responsible for organizing the 2020 Regional Conference Ministries Convocation. When the pandemic hit, we said, even though we can't get together physically, we'll do an online camp meeting. And we did that in 2020. All right? My office organizes joint statements in times of tragedy and crisis. All right? Let's go to the next slide. When a new president is elected or a new vice president, my office provides orientation for new leaders. All right? Let's go to the next slide. Every first Sabbath, we have an online interview program where it is called First Sabbath, and we interview news leaders from around the regional conference. We already said, we publish the Regional Voice, and let's go to the next slide. So, actually, our office functions like a union or a division. So now, if somebody says, what is ORCM? Office of Regional Conference Ministries. It's the office that coordinates all the things that regional conferences do together. All right? But that's not really what you want to know. What you really want to know is, what is a regional conference and why do we have it? Usually when people think of regional conferences, they think of black conferences, right? But that's not really what a regional conference is. A regional conference is all the churches in a region coming together to form a conference. In the Adventist Church in North America, there are two kinds of conferences. Regional conferences, all the churches in a region, and state conferences, all the churches in a state. So here you have the Minnesota Conference, all the churches in Minnesota, and Lake Region, all the conferences, all the churches in an area. The Midwest area. In Lake Region's case, it's Illinois, Indiana, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and one other one, I can't remember. Michigan. All right? So next slide. So here's the question that everybody asks that you want to know. Why are there two, in your case there's three, but usually there's two. Why are there two separate conferences? So in Minneapolis, we know that there's the Minnesota Conference and there's the Lake Region Conference. Why do we have to have two? Especially since typically one conference is mostly black and one is mostly white. Why do people say, oh, there's not going to be a black heaven and a white heaven, so why do we have black conferences and white conferences? There's not going to be a white conference in heaven and a black conference in heaven. But the truth of the matter is, there's not going to be any conference in heaven. All right. So why do we need two separate organizations? All right. Here's how we're going to answer that question. Because people say, okay, why do you need regional conferences? Aren't they just copying copying or duplicating what Minnesota Conference is doing? So I'm going to answer that question, but I need 6 people to volunteer to help me. All right? So I need 6 volunteers to come down front right now. 6. I need 6 people. Yes, 6. I need 6. Okay, here's 1. Here's 2. Here's 3. There's 4. I need some ladies. Okay, go ahead, baby. Okay. Now let me have a lady. I need a lady. Okay, Miss Davis. Oh, thank you. All right, nobody's coming. And because you came, you get to come. You came first. Okay. You get to be Miss Lake Regions. She's Miss Lake Region. She represents the lake. Let's give her a hand. She's Miss Lake Region. Okay. Now, inside of her territory, we have the following states, and each of them has a conference. Okay. So she's Lake Region, but you're the Illinois conference, right? You're the Indiana conference. You're the Michigan conference. You're Wisconsin conference. And you're the Minnesota conference. All right. But she's Miss Lake Region, right? Now, she covers the same thing. Now, see, people ask, aren't regional conferences a duplication of service? They're copying. Okay, so we're going to answer that question. Okay, she covers the states of Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota. She covers all that herself, right? Okay, she has a conference president, right? But guess what? She has a conference president. Illinois has a conference president. Indiana has a conference president. Michigan has a conference president. Wisconsin has a conference president. Minnesota has it, right? Okay. She has a campground, right? But guess what? Illinois has a campground. Indiana has a campground. Michigan has a campground. Wisconsin has a campground. Minnesota has a campground. She has her own conference office. But guess what? Illinois has a conference office. Indiana has a conference office. Michigan has a conference office. Wisconsin has a conference office. Minnesota has a conference office. In her conference office, she has people like a youth director and an education director, publishing director. She has that. But guess what? She has a youth director. He 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 has. Okay, so she has everything that they have. Now let me ask you a question. Which costs less money to operate? Her or all of y'all? Yes. Who is a better business model? Her or all of you? But even though she operates with 60% of what they have, she is growing 4 times faster than they are. Okay? But you know what they're saying? They're saying she needs to close down and come and join them. Because, ladies and gentlemen, when we say let's all come together, when we say that, we're not meaning they're coming to her, even though they cost more money and they're not growing as fast. But they are never going to shut down and come to her. The expectation is she is going to come to them. But here's my last question. She is accused of being a duplication of services. But who's really duplicating services? Her or all of y'all? All right, let's thank our volunteers. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, here's my point. When you don't know your history, then other people tell your story from their perspective. And in the United States, that story is the story of people of color is an aberration. And the real story is the story of the majority culture. Right? All right, let's go to the next slide. Okay, let's keep going because we already did that part. Just keep going until I say something. Okay, no, go back. Okay, here's in the there are 9. Remember I told you there were 9 regional conferences in the territory that the 9 regional conferences cover. There are 30 state conferences, 30, which cost tens of millions of dollars more to operate than regional conferences. All right, let's keep going. And here's some examples, but I won't take time to go through. So we're going to skip through all of that. Okay, here's where I want to start. Now we're going to talk a little history here, a little African American history. On the screen, you see the first African American pastor to be ordained into the Seventh-day Adventist Church. His name is Charles M. Kinney. All right, Charles Kinney started his ministry in the late 1900s or so. Okay, so he did his ministry not too very far from here in places like Kansas City and St. Louis. And he brought a lot of people into the Seventh-day Adventist Church. But at that time, there were no black churches. So when Charles Kinney brought people into the Seventh-day Adventist, when he brought all these black people into the Seventh-day Adventist Church, he was bringing them into a majority, he was bringing them into a Caucasian church. Now this is the late 19th century. So I want you to imagine a white church in the late 1900s, and all of a sudden, here come all these black people into the church. Imagine. There was joy in heaven, but there was not joy in St. Louis. Come on, say amen. They were not happy to have all their African American brothers to become Adventists and join their church. And so Charles Kinney was the first person to say, maybe we need to have our own entities because we are not welcome in the majority culture. All right, let's go to the next. I want to tell you about 4 key figures in African American history. That was the first one. Here's the second. His name is Claude Barnett. Now he's a key figure, even though he's not an Adventist. So how can he be a key figure and not in the Adventist church without being an Adventist? I'm glad you asked that question. Claude Barnett was a journalist back in the 30s and the 40s. Here's what we know about journalists back in the 30s and the 40s. If you were black, guess what paper you were not writing for? You were not writing for the Minneapolis Star or the Chicago Tribune or any white paper. You couldn't do that. You had to work for black newspapers. Okay, Okay, so he wrote, he was the leading black journalist, and he had Adventist friends. And so he embarrassed the Adventist church by writing about how difficult it was to be a black Seventh-day Adventist in the 30s and 40s. Now, I need to tell you something about me, because I don't want you to think I'm some angry black man who, no. I, as a conference president, hired the first white pastor, the first white school teachers, because I believe in diversity. Right? But in the United States and in the Adventist church, diversity only works one way. That's people of color going to Caucasian entities. It very rarely works the other way around. Right? And I grew up Seventh-day Adventist. As a matter of fact, my grandmother joined the church after hearing from Edson White, the gospel from Edson White in Vicksburg, Mississippi. So when I was growing up, I had no non-Adventist relatives on either side of my family. So I'm like the king of Adventists, okay? But I have to tell you the truth. As much as I love this church, and I do, being an Adventist is all I know. I went to all Adventist schools, and when I graduated, I became an Adventist pastor. Being an Adventist is all I know. But what I'm going to tell you today is the sad truth, and that is that Adventist church has an ugly history of racism. It just does. Doesn't mean it's not God's church. It is God's church. But too many times we didn't act like God's church. The Seventh-day Adventist church was every bit as segregated as the rest of the world. It just was. Right? All right. So, Claude Barnett wrote about how he wrote about the reality of being black in the Seventh-day Adventist church. Let me give you a couple of examples. The General Conference headquarters. We all know where the General Conference headquarters is. It's in Maryland. Back in the day, in the 30s and the 40s, if it was lunchtime and you were visiting the General Conference office, guess who was not eating in the General Conference cafeteria? Everybody who looked like all of y'all. We could not eat in the General Conference cafeteria for only one reason, because we were black. Okay? I went to Andrews University Seminary for grad school. You could eat, back in the day, you could eat at, not when I was there, but back in the 30s and the 40s, you could eat at the Andrews cafeteria, but you would have to eat at the colored table. There was segregated seating in God's church. All right? Okay? And so Claude Barnett wrote about that and embarrassed the church. But here's the straw that broke the camel's back. Let's put that next slide up there, Pastor. Lucy Byard. Okay? Lucy Byard was African American, but she was much lighter than in this picture. We kind of guessed what she looked like, because we really have a whole bunch of pictures of her. She was very light, and she wanted to be treated in an Adventist hospital. The Adventist church runs one of the largest health care we run one of the largest hospital systems in the world. If you ever get a chance to work for the Adventist health system, Elder Palmer, if they offer you a job, you need to run, leave, drop everything,
campaign and run and work for the Adventist hospital system because they pay very well. That's the only place in the Adventist church where there's money. All right. So one day, if your pastor is preaching and he leaves in the middle of the sermon, we say, oh, he got called to the Adventist healthcare system. He raptured away and went to work for them because they pay very well. All right. I mean, when I say very well, as in the people at the top are like in 7 figures. Y'all hear what I'm saying? 7 figures. All right. Okay. So, in fact, if they called me right now, I was talking to you, I'd be gone. That's right. I'm sure I'd say, put Miss Heaven on a plane and have her catch me. But I'm out of here to work for the healthcare system. All right. So let's go back to Lucy Carter. All right. So she wanted to be treated in a hospital. In those days, in our hospital in Washington, D.C., it was called Washington Sanitarium. And in those days, in order to be admitted, if you didn't live there, you wrote a letter. Well, they wrote a letter, and they admitted her because they didn't know she was black. She was so light-skinned, when she got there, they still admitted her. But apparently, they looked on her application, saw that she was black, and you know what they did? They kicked her out. She's dying. And they kicked her out because she was black. Because the Adventist Church and the state of Maryland had a policy that forbade black people to be treated in white hospitals. So they kicked her out, sent her to the black hospital, which was called in those days Washington Freedmen's Hospital. And she got treated there and there she died. Interestingly enough, today, Washington Freedmen's Hospital is called Howard University Hospital, and today it's run by the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Right? But that enraged the people in Washington, who for that time had an unusually large number of educated black people for that day. Right? So they had, for example, Brother Davis, they had Eva B. Dykes, who we knew. We literally knew her. Right? Eva B. Dykes was the first black person anywhere to finish the requirements for a PhD. She went to that church. The second person to finish PhD, second woman to finish the PhD, the requirements for a PhD, went to that church. So they had an unusual amount, and so they petitioned, let's go to the next slide. They petitioned the General Conference, and they said, listen, we've had enough of discrimination in housing, in employment. Listen, do you know that it took the Adventist Church 100 years to have the first black administrator in the General Conference? 100 years. Okay? So they said, listen, we've had enough. And so, because of what happened with Lucy Bynum and other things, on April 8 to 11, 1944, the General Conference voted to allow what they call colored conferences. And the action that they took said colored conferences to be run by colored pastors and colored lay people. Why was that important? That was important for 2 reasons. Up until that time, black people were not allowed to run anything. Let me give you 2 examples. The General Conference, before their regional conference, had what was called the Negro Department. They supervised the black world. Guess which ethnicity the first 3 directors of the Negro Department were? Anybody want to guess? They were Caucasian. It was the Negro department, but it was run by Caucasians. All of you who are from Africa, the Adventist church was operated by Caucasians from Europe and from North America in Africa. Y'all could not operate you all. And it was not until the 1980s when they told the Caucasians, go home, we got it from here. It wasn't until that happened that the work in Africa exploded to the point that the church in Africa is by far, there's nothing close to the Adventist population in Africa in the rest of the world church. In fact, there are almost as many Adventists in Africa as there are in the rest of the world. Now, they may be missing some of y'all, because y'all came over here. But the church in Africa is almost as large as all the rest of the church put together. But that did not happen until they placed Africans in charge of the work in Africa. Right? The same thing happened in the United States. Because it's always easier to work for people who share your own culture. Now, that's not the only people we reach, but that's the first group of people that we reach. Because if we don't work for people of color, then who's going to do that? All right? Okay. Now, the second reason why that is important is, I want to see if you've been listening. Who voted for regional conferences to exist? Who made that vote? What entity voted to do that? Okay, I know what color they were, but what entity voted? Look at this. The General Conference, that's right, the General Conference. Why is that important? Black people in the United States did not get mad and say, we're out of here. The General Conference, which was almost entirely white, voted for a regional conference because they had a choice between full integration and regional conferences. And given a choice between integration and regional conferences, they chose regional conferences. But now, what they're saying is, you need to get rid of regional conferences. So, what they're really saying is, once upon a time, we didn't want to integrate. Now we're ready to integrate. And our solution for integration is you all close down the entities that we made you start when we weren't ready for integration. All right? All right. Now, so the first regional conference was actually your conference, Lake Region. Now they formed two others within about a month of that, but you all came across the finish line first. So Lake Region has the distinction of being the first regional conference, and next year you'll celebrate your 80th anniversary as a conference. All right, let's go to the next slide. Okay. Oh, that's right. Okay, I was in Lake Region last month. Okay, Central 6. Okay, so y'all came along a little bit. Okay. All right, thank you. All right. And here we see the mathematical computations that show regional conferences have grown 4 times faster than the rest of the church. All right. In other words, there's 17 times as many members of regional conferences now as there were in 1950. All right, let's go. And here's some of Here's regional conference leaders that we've all heard of. E.E. Cleveland, C.D. Brooks. Let's go to the next. Charles Bradford and Charles Dutton. All of these men were nurtured in regional conferences. In fact, their ministries may have never began if there weren't for regional conferences. All right, let's go on. Okay, here's some regional conference entities. We talked about that. Let's go on, and here's where we close. Here's 6 reasons why. Now, I just gave you history. Now, let's bring it on down to the current day. Now, that been, some of you may be saying, that was in the past. Why do we need regional conferences today? Here's reason number 1. Regional conferences allow people of color to control their own resources, right? What do I mean by that? If you didn't have regional conferences, you would be dependent on what the Minnesota Conference gave black people in order to operate. So whatever they gave you, you would have, that's what you would have to operate. As opposed to central states, where all of the time that's returned in central states, the people of central states decide how to spend that time. Okay? So let me give you an example. Remember I showed you, let's go to the next slide. Here's example number 1. There is no regional conference retirement plan without regional conferences. Now, that doesn't mean very much to those of you who don't work for the church, but if you did work for the church, I want you to imagine a retirement system that requires you to work 40 years and then when you retire, to have to live on $1,200 a month. Anybody ready to sign up for that? I don't think so, but that's what we have. Okay? The regional conferences 20 years ago set up their own retirement plan so that when I retire in a few years, I will be able, in large part, to the regional conference retirement plan to make a salary the same thing I'm making now. Right? So thank you for saying amen. Amen. Ms. Edmonds said amen. That's right. She would have to go back to work. For that. All right. But she's on the retirement plan too. And she's not going back to work. All right, Mrs. Edmonds. I'm sorry to hear that, but maybe it took care of her too well. All right. Here, number 2. Remember I just told you when we built our building, the houses, all our ministries, it cost us $9 million. We didn't owe anything. That's because regional conferences control their own resources. And so they, instead of borrowing money from the bank, we borrow money from ourselves. Right? And now imagine how much interest you would have to pay if you borrowed $9 million. Right? If you have a 30-year mortgage, you're going to pay for that house 3 times. So imagine if we borrowed $9 million and we paid for that building 3 times, that's $20 million of interest that would have gone to a bank instead of into ministry. Come on, say amen. Amen. So if there's no other reason, I've got 5 more. People of color having the ability to control their own resources is almost of enough reason by itself to have regional conferences. Okay? Because if we didn't control our resources, we would be dependent on what somebody else gives us. Right? It's the difference between having an allowance and having a salary. When I was a little boy, my father gave me an allowance. Anybody used to get an allowance when you were a child growing up? Yeah. But now, did you decide what you got for an allowance? No. My father said, your allowance is 25 cents a week. Yeah, my father said that. All right? And so so I saved up my little money to do little things for myself, but he decided what I got. When you don't have a regional conference, your ministry is decided by an allowance that somebody else gives you. Everybody, listen to what I'm saying. Every person of color who is not in a regional conference, somebody else decides the direction of your ministry. Your ministry is not decided by you. It's decided by somebody else. All right? Let's go to the next slide. Regional conferences give people of color a seat at the denominational decision-making table. All right? In the Adventist Church, representation at things like general conference and on the union level and on the division level, it's decided by two things. One, by church membership, and two, by denominational entities. So, when I was a conference president, I was a delegate to the general conference. The only reason why I was a delegate was because I was a conference president. If South Central wasn't a conference, then we would be meeting with other people who didn't look like us and saying, can you please give us representation? We don't have that